Well, I hope you're all enjoying your food and beverages whilst we're still up here working hard. My guests are allowed to indulge in a beverage or two. But like I say, we're going to keep this to about 20 minutes. So let me just take a quick look here. And I'm absolutely delighted to invite and join our guests, Claire Ramsey, from Omanos. There is a story behind the name. Omanos Analytics. And then we have Robin from Trade in Space and Richard from Astro Energy. And the reason these guys are here is because they're all doing pretty spectacular things in the space sector, but particularly using what they're doing in terms of data and technology and innovation as a force for good. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that. But Mike from Entrepreneurial Spark opened up this morning talking about a 1-minute pitch. So given we're a little pressed for time, I wonder if I can invite you all to just in a minute introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what your businesses do, if that would be okay.
Sure, shall I go first?
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm Claire, I'm the Technical Director of Omanos Analytics. So our main focus is to use space technologies to get data where it's needed. So that includes satellite data analysis, so imagery analysis, and satellite-enabled GPS data from communities and community land mapping, with a sort of cyclical application of those data sources to support each other. Our main focus is humanitarian and environmental goals, so looking at impacts from mine expansions and land grabs related to those, and also climate impacts and the worsening climate crisis all over the world. I think that was...
Thanks, Claire. Robin, do you want to... We'll go along the line.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Sampson. I'm from Trade in Space. I founded the company about 4 years ago. We provide analysis on agriculture supply chains for customers that operate on a global scale. We especially work with commodity traders and coffee traders, cocoa traders, natural rubber traders now as well, palm oil traders. We provide information on all of the sources of supply for those companies and help them gain some sustainability data at a portfolio level across all the continents that they work in.
Thanks, Robin. And Richard, last but not least.
I'm Richard Osborne. I'm the CTO of Astro Agency, which was formed initially by a group of escapees from the launch industry who realized that there was a problem with marketing of the space industry, and we realized that this was something that we could help with because we understood the industry. And in the process of doing marketing, we discovered that there was a lot of work that needed doing in terms of technical consultancy as well. And because we all had strong space backgrounds, we got more and more into the technical side, due diligence and so on. And then they discovered that I had an Earth observation background, and I got roped into doing an awful lot around Earth observation and how it can benefit the planet as a whole. And we're very lucky. We've got a team of people who feel utterly devoted to trying to do everything they can to help the planet. So that's basically our story. We're just out to help everyone.
Brilliant, thanks. And I guess the common theme here is that you're using your capabilities to really create a level of transparency and hold organisations to account, and I guess in some ways each and every one of us to account around how we're using the planet, what we're saying we're doing from a point of view of our impact on the planet. So what I'm interested in exploring a little more, because I know from doing some research you've achieved some phenomenal things as businesses. What has really inspired you to focus on using your capabilities for good? Perhaps, I tell you what, we'll mix it up a bit. We'll go to Robin first, if that's all right.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Well, I think for us, what we tried to set out to do with Trade in Space, and our reason for being, is that we saw that actually trade and international trade can be such a powerful lever to support environmental change and environmental sustainability. We always took the view that it's important to try and bring some of the biggest corporations in the world to a point of view where they can get on board with sustainability, whilst at the same time realizing that it was important for them to kind of lead from the front in that respect. And in order to do that, we thought that the most powerful way we could use satellite technology was to support direct trade between agriculture producers and their customers wherever they might be in the world. So that was the sort of big picture vision. And through doing that, we can enable far greater investment and reduce a lot of unnecessary cost that there might be. And we've got some quite impressive results now of where this approach has been taking us. So that was it. I was really trying to understand and square the circle between how can we achieve real impact at a global scale with the technologies that we have. And for us, using the analysis that we produced to support direct trade applications was the route for us to go down.
Thanks, Robin. And Claire, you have, or your organisation, I don't know whether it's you directly, but certainly your organisation, has been involved in some pretty high-profile cases, I think, hasn't it, in terms of creating that transparency and really holding global organisations to account. Tell us what originally inspired that, but perhaps a little flavour and colour of the kind of things that you guys get involved in on the ground.
Sure, yeah. So accountability is essentially one of the core founding principles of the company. So we were founded by my two colleagues, Celia and Steve. And Steve Greenland, some of you will probably know, he came from a sort of systems engineering space background, whereas Celia comes from a human rights and international law background. So I think the original conversation happened in a pub around evidencing crimes, humanitarian crimes. And the question was raised of why can't you use satellite data? And that sort of, from that, Amanos was born, and that uses the core principle that satellite data is sort of fundamentally, if used correctly, it can be unbiased and thus used in a sort of as evidence of environmental and humanitarian crimes. So we've used this in ways for, so for example, mine expansion, where communities have accused a mine company of land grabs and insufficient repayment of the loss, and the company has said no. But then the satellite data shows that this was actually the case. So there's a lot that can be gained from simply that unbiased third-party view. And this is extended to, expansions in oil and gas and the environmental impacts from that, and then also climate change as well.
Really interesting and really powerful stuff as well. Now, Richard, from a marketing perspective, excuse me, I do apologise. When we talk about business being a force for good, often in today's world, the phrase greenwashing is touted around, and in some regards quite rightly so. And sometimes that's associated with marketing in terms of, a particular approach is taken for the purposes of commercialization, and that's not wholly sort of ethical or honest. What kind of things are you doing, particularly in the space sector, but to sort of counter that?
That's a very, very good question.
Sorry, it is very late in the day to be asking those.
No,
you deserve another beer.
It's a very good question. And the answer is that we're absolutely pedantic about the truth getting out there. So we won't take on any company that we think is greenwashing or is doing anything the wrong way. And certainly with my physics hat on, I'll get to the truth if there's any problems with the numbers. I won't have it, and I know the rest of the team are the same, the founders Daniel and Dasha are absolutely passionate that at all stages we keep everything as truthful and honest in terms of the message on sustainability. No greenwashing, absolutely not. And if that marks us as possibly slightly different to others in the marketing domain, then so be it. But we would rather keep our integrity and have a very, very honest message, because I think that's better for everyone anyway.
And I think, from what I understand, in some ways you could argue that the approach that you're taking and the success of the business is because it's providing that endorsement that if somebody is working with you as an agency, then, in some ways by de facto, there is real integrity behind the statements and the pledges that they're making.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone's going to make a claim, I'm going to get in trouble now with my team. But if someone's going to make claims of, we're offsetting against trees, and it's, hang on. It doesn't quite work like that. A tree takes 30 years to grow, and there's a lot of greenwashing going on there, and we will call people out on that.
Brilliant. Okay. So something that I do hear quite a lot of, and UMI is a B Corp business, so we're involved in that movement, is sometimes having these principles, using your business as a force for good, can sometimes constrain the business. And I'm hearing a little bit at the moment emerging from an investment perspective, because some investors want returns in a particular way over a particular time frame. I'm interested to understand what challenges have you faced as, growing successful businesses, and how have you overcome them and really retained that principle and being a force for good. Perhaps if we can come back to you, Claire, first.
And there's not really much I can say for this, because I haven't sought investment. One of these reasons is, as you say, I don't want to be put in the position where I have to prioritize something other than the core principles of the company. And yes, I think it has affected the way that some companies run and the priorities they're able to focus on. But it's something I'm actively avoiding.
Interesting. Okay. Robin, what about yourself?
I think, for us, one of the most important things is that we can offer our services for free to small agriculture producers. So that's critical, and that's core to our mission. At the end of the day, what we want to do is help those people continue to access global markets. Someone has to pay us something for us to stay in business and keep doing what we're doing. So it can be a tricky balancing act between courting corporate trading businesses who we have to have pay for the service, but also offering it for free to farmers' cooperatives as well. So there's a slightly different business model that we've had to develop so that can work, and a different finance model as well. To enable us to continue to provide that. So that's been a big challenge. It's been a tough sell to our current investors. But ultimately, they chose to invest in us because they thought that we could help them to change their own ways of doing business as well. So we just have to stick to that line and make sure that we're not really going to compromise on that. So that's been the biggest challenge for us.
And in terms of, if we can just stick with that for a moment, because we've got two kind of schools here. One where you haven't sought investment for very clear reasons and concerns, and another where you have investment and you're managing to maintain that investor relationship in a positive way whilst there are challenges. How have you done that? What advice would you give to other people? Because it's not common in your kind of subsector, if you will.
Well, I think for us, maybe there's a slight nuance here in that our investor is a corporate investor. So they're one of the biggest coffee trading businesses in the world, the biggest supplier to Starbucks and Costa and all those guys. So they made an investment in our company because they saw that we could potentially offer a different way for them to do business in the future and link their producers closer to their own customers. So I guess we have a little bit of influence in terms of how they choose to position their business, at least in certain ring-fenced parts of their supply chain, where they let us, that acts as a kind of sandbox for how to change potential trading models of theirs.
That is such a great example, I think, of where corporate venturing works tremendously well. And at UMI, we talk to a lot of businesses about that, particularly when you are of a smaller size, you're perhaps in your early stages of trading, you've got that innovation or great idea, bringing in a corporate to provide that scale and investment and so on and so forth, who is like-minded and has the right motivations, can be tremendously powerful. So it sounds like it's worked really well. Maybe that's something to have a look at, Claire, going forward. So going back to the original question, Richard, which was around, you know, what challenges have you faced or are you facing keeping those kind of principles maintained?
Another very good question, but I think it's less of a problem for us because it's our wonderful clients. And you know, that sounds very flannelly, but the reality is it's the clients who are doing all the clever stuff. And what we're doing is amplifying the message that they have. You look at what these guys are doing here, and it's just wonderful. It's changing the world. Again, without risking to get into too much trouble, we've got the easy job. We're just shouting the message of what they're doing.
Okay, cool, thank you. And what I'd just like to, I guess, touch on, because we've got a huge amount of influence in the conference over the course of the couple of days that we're running. So if you could change something in the space sector so that you could do more, have even bigger impact, what would it be? Claire?
This is where I might get in trouble. I think there needs to be less of a commitment to ultra-commercial solutions. Some things are essential without being commercially viable. And I think without that, we won't reach the full potential of what space technology can do.
Really interesting. And what kind of things do you put into that essential category?
Well, it's a bit like what Robin mentioned. People who can't pay for it still need data. The climate isn't going to fix itself, and fixing the climate is not particularly commercially viable. There are ways of making it so, and a lot of people are doing that, and we're one of them. But that's not a fast way to get things done.
Perfect. And Robin?
I think it would be something in there about making data more accessible and having more open source data. I would kind of agree with Claire on that point. And you know, from my own perspective and Trading Space's perspective, we had a lot of support from lots of different stakeholder groups when we were just starting up the business. One thing we didn't have but would have loved to have had was more commercial data to build our products around. Fortunately, I worked in the sector for quite a long time, so had some contacts and was able to get help, ask for help nicely from academics and other people that I knew, people like Paul and the Catapult that could help us. But I think there's a bit of a challenge still about making commercial data accessible to people who can't really afford to buy it. Not just smallholder farmers, but SMEs that are trying to develop serious tech products. It's a challenge there as well.
Wow, brilliant. So I guess there's a huge opportunity for everyone here and the sector generally to have a think about is how can they use, and you know, the world is very protective around data, and quite rightly so in some regards, but how can they use one of their assets without much investment as a force for good? I think that's a really great challenge to the audience, Robin. And Richard, what are your thoughts on this? What would you ask of the sector so that organisations like yourself can do even more?
I think the biggest problem is people aren't aware of how many wonderful companies are out there doing great things. And the challenge is to get that message out there. We've seen 2 examples here, but there are a couple of hundred companies in the UK, and they are doing great things, but people are unaware of that. And we have to get that message out to the wider public.
I couldn't agree more, and I will confess that I'm not of the space sector, and I was coming along today thinking, oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to present myself as credible to all of this expertise and capability? And I thought, well, I'm just not going to try. I'll stick to the knitting. And it wasn't until I was doing some research for this morning's opening and also today that I, as sort of just a regular citizen, realised how much incredible impact the sector is having on things like social well-being and the environment. And it is extraordinary, as I said this morning, and it truly can be transformational. So I guess on the back of that, I would sum that up to say there are some phenomenal organisations here in the conference over the course of the next couple of days. You're all going to be doing your social media, I'm sure, and so on and so forth. And whether you're a sector representative, one of the catapults, a business in your own right, take Richard's challenge and make sure that people out there really, really understand the power of the space sector and don't fall into the trap, as I did, thinking that it's something a little bit abstract, and for most of us who've never been involved in it, something somewhat obscure, and I don't really understand how it connects to my day-to-day well-being and life. So go out and bang the drum, because by doing that, you're going to get more investment, your businesses are going to thrive as well, and look at the difference we'd be making to the world around us. So I'm very conscious I stand with my guests between you and, I believe, a quiz and a band and more fun and networking and whatnot. So I'd just like to say thanks for hanging on in there, guys, because I know we've been running late. Absolutely fascinating stories and brilliant, the stuff that you're doing. So please keep doing more and more of it. Thank you to you for hanging on in there as well, and have an absolutely brilliant evening. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks very much.